Welcome in the panel Decent Public Protests, Oxymoron or Reality. As I have announced yesterday morning, we decided to focus this last panel of our conference on very up-to-date current situation in Slovakia and in Hungary. And we were discussing within PDCS whether protests are fitting to what did we focus in this conference, like face-to-face communication, non-violent action, how actually it fits together. And especially because the type of the protests we have in Bratislava, which are called For Decent Slovakia, we decided that it very much fits the point and the idea of this conference. So what we would like to do now is to discuss together with three guests which we have here, and it's Karolina Farska, Katarina Naď-Pazmáň, and Marton Gyulyás. The culture, and maybe start with the reason for the protests and some context of the protests which we have here in Slovakia and which are happening not just recently, but maybe in longer term in Hungary. And we already discussed in some way situation in both of our countries. But I will at the beginning give some floor to our guests to tell us a little bit more about how they see the situation. But before that, I will a little bit introduce the guests. And then we will see very short video from Slovak protests to give you, especially those who are not from Slovakia, to get some flavor of how these protests are actually organized and how it looks like. And I don't know how our guests are fitting your perception of protesters, but Karolina, I don't know for what age you would guess her. She's 19. She's actually a student on a high school. She's graduating. So instead of going to school, she's now here now with us. And she is one of the organizing of great anti-corruption protests in Slovakia in 2017. And now she is one of two people who are moderating protests in Bratislava. So you will see her in videos. Katarina Naď-Pazmáň, to be full, to provide full name of her. She is our colleague at PDCS. She does the trainings in time management and the boundaries for us. But the more important, she is psychologist by profession, and she works for Comenius Institute, which is program specially focused on teachers. And Marton, it's theater and film producer. But more importantly, he holds the Hungarian biggest political YouTube channel, Slame. And he's also one of the initiator of a movement, Country for All, in Hungary. And he is trying to change or to create a movement about reform of election system in Hungary. And he will say much more about it in a moment. So maybe let's start with short video from Slovak protests.
Za týždeň ste ukázali, že všetko závisí od našej spoločnej odvahy. A že keď sa deje neprávosť, tak sa musíme spojiť a ozvať sa.
Okay, so this was invitation actually to one of the protests in last month, or even a little sooner, 2 months. Maybe now I will give floor to you. I don't know which of you will start. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it started and what is your role in that?
Mm-hmm. So this video you could see, it was after the second gathering. We actually have a tendency to call it gatherings more than protests. And it all started 2 months ago when we heard the news in the newspaper that a journalist, Jan Kuciak, and his fiancée, Martina Kušnírova, were murdered. And this was really shocking for us. It started that I was in my 7 months of pregnancy and I was driving. I heard it in the radio and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I called my husband. We were complaining, how can this happen in the democratic country in this year? And we were shocked. And we couldn't see, read, or hear more information about this matter, but we decided that we have to do something. So at the beginning, we decided that we are going to do a march on Friday. This news happened on Monday, and we wanted to do a march on Friday. And this march was supposed to be like an action that we don't want to live in the country where journalists are murdered, that it is unacceptable for us. And with this idea, we connected with Karolina and the rest of the team. And slowly it started to shape our movement, which had different stages, because at the beginning we didn't know what we are going to demand, or we didn't know what is involved in all of this. But after Friday's march, which onto this march came probably around 25,000 people, which was really a lot at the time. And with the information which slowly started to show in the public and in the news, we knew that we have to keep on and that we have to continue in the gatherings or protests or everything. And firstly, we just set 2 demands. The first was that we want a trustworthy government. A second demand was that we want proper investigation of this murder. And this happened during the first week maybe, and slowly it started to shape for this in Slovakia, and I think Karolina will continue a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so firstly, the first thing we had organized was the march for Jan and Martina in memory of them, and we didn't have any requirements. We were just doing that because we knew that we have to do something. We didn't quite knew what it should be, and we just felt that politicians should just do the steps to be responsible and to do something. After the march, like Katka said, 25,000 people came, which was the most after the Velvet Revolution in 1999. So they didn't quite do anything. They were just making statements, but nothing has changed. After that, we knew that we gotta make real requirements and real demands, like Katka said. And from that time, we were making it was 3 times, 3 Fridays. Friday after Friday, we were making gatherings in the SMP Square in Bratislava, but it wasn't just a thing in Bratislava. It was a thing it was a nationwide thing. It was in all over Slovakia. And steps, firstly, just small steps were achieved, but after that, the first thing we have achieved was that Ministry of the Interior Affairs, he resigned. After him, he was there for 10 years, which was something quite unbelievable. After him, also Prime Minister, and then we had here a new government, and we just here there right now, but we have to continue even now because none of our requirements were made. So the point on the government that we need here a new trustworthy government which wouldn't be connected to the organized crime or mafia. So right now we do believe that systematic changes have to be done there, and also we don't trust, for example, our new ministries of the interior affairs, so there is much to do even now, and we are still in progress in all of this.
Thank you for saying something from very beginning of these marches or protests. Haven't you been surprised that you actually achieved the stepping down by the Minister of Interior? Because, as you said, Karolina, he was there for 10 years and there are so many diverse attempts to really put him down because people did not trust it, the police. The trust in police was dropping for the last years, and there were more and more different events in which the police was not behaving properly. So how do you actually, what do you think, what played the most important role in decision of the minister and prime minister to withdraw from these positions?
Yeah, that's the thing, that like he resigned, he was there for 10 years, and he was for thousands of people in Slovakia, he was something like a symbol of corruption, like actually in Slovakia. But like he resigned, and like for example a year ago somebody would say, oh, like there's a great achievement, like now we can start to make new days and something like this, but in this situation it was just totally not enough, and like it wasn't something which we could be satisfied just with that. So we had to continue, and the fact was that it was the people who came to the squares who showed really decently and really in emotions, like that they need here government, and they would trust actually, and also they want here a country in which they want to live in which they want to raise kids, for example, and in which they want to have a future. So it was the people in the squares, and it was the thousands of people all over Slovakia. Like I said, it's not just a Bratislava thing. And on to the biggest gathering in Bratislava came 65,000 people, which is like the biggest gathering like ever in Slovakia. So it was a great deal.
Do you have any idea how it actually happened? That this idea for happenings and for meetings, for marches, spread all over Slovakia. How many towns and how many cities these protests were organized? How that happened? How these people came to you and started to coordinate on the dates and so?
It started with the march already, and I think the main reason was that it was something shocking for everybody, and everybody could relate to this story. I mean, Jan Kuciak was 27 years old journalist. He was just a normal guy who was planning to have a wedding, and I think the story was very human. And the story didn't, at the beginning, it didn't bear anything politicians, or like it wasn't politician at the inside, of course, but not outside. And I think many people could relate to this, and many people they didn't want to stay silent. I mean, normally even me in my 7 months pregnancy, I wouldn't say anything and go to the streets like, we don't want this government. But with this situation, I had to do something. And I think that many people felt the same urge that they need to do something because this is not normal and this shouldn't be happening. So at the beginning, at the first march, people from different cities in Slovakia, but also from all over the world, from expat community, they started to contact us that they think of Slovakia, that they want to be part of this, that they are going to organize something. And afterwards we stayed in contact with them, and they were also moved with the findings of Jan articles. And they wanted to continue. So in together, I think it was around 50 or 60 cities which organized something.
Would you like to add something?
I think it was pretty clear.
Okay, thank you. Let's look to Hungary and to Budapest. Marton, we know that especially now after elections, after Orbán was re-elected, and it was a huge success of Orbán because he has constitutional majority in the parliament now. There was huge amount of people in the streets of Budapest. What was the amount of people? Tell us how you see these protests and what they are trying to achieve and what is the possibility for them to be successful or not.
Okay, so thanks a lot for having me. Really, I'm really appreciate this gesture. To give you historical context of this protest, I should provide a kind of narrative what happened in the past 1 year. So our movement called Country for All was fighting for a comprehensive reform of the current election system in Hungary because it was created back in 2011 by the governmental party only, and it was passed by the governmental party only because back in 2010 Orbán and his government got his first two-third majority, the constitutional majority, so they didn't need any kind of a negotiation with the opposition parties. The opposition parties tried to put some obstacles in front of these legislations, but they failed. So since 2011, after the transition, Hungary again has a one-party election system. And it's a very tricky one. I don't want to go into details, but after the 2014 election, it was clear that with this kind of party economical system, it is not it is not possible to have an opposition victory because the opposition parties are so fragmented and they are fighting with each other, and even if they had the majority of the support from the people, because back in 2014 more than 55% of the voters casted their vote on opposition parties. So even in this situation, Orbán was able to get the two-third majority, the constitutional majority, back in 2014. So the idea was that we collected all the opposition parties, offered them a space, we involved professionals on this issue, and we've created a clearly proportional election system, and we tried to pass it in the parliament, which has failed, of course. And then we tried to go ahead and organize some demonstrations and civil disobedience actions, and in order to put some pressure on the government, but we failed again. And it was just a half a year before the election. So the question was, how could we right now, back in last October, prevent the two-thirds from happening again? How can we somehow, push back Fidesz, the governmental party, a bit? And that's why we came up with the idea of coordination in the individual constituencies in order to find the best candidate, the most supported candidate, and to run and recommend this particular candidate for all the opposition voters against the Fidesz, the governmental candidate. And we made, public polls, surveys, we made a media campaign, we made a rally in the country. It was a relatively successful campaign because more than 400,000 voters used these tactical voting methods, which means that you are casting your vote on the national list on a party which is, familiar with your ideological, worldview, and with your individual vote you are casting or you are supporting that particular candidate from the opposition field which has the best chance to get this position from the governmental candidate. But the problem was that it was not supported by the opposition parties because they were against this idea somehow. So still, in most of the constituencies, more than 5 opposition candidates were, running against each other. So that's why, again, the opposition votes were so fragmented, and still Fidesz got the two-thirds majority. But the problem is that they got, more support on the national list that they got in 2014. And I don't want to go into an analysis why this happened. But the point is that people, especially in the capital, were extremely frustrated about this outcome because all of these efforts in the past 2 years, all of these scandals about massive corruption, just to, giving some examples. So the son-in-law of the prime minister was accused of billions of foreign contracts where he cheated and he didn't, provided the necessary services which was in the contract. There were huge scandals about billions of euros, not foreigns, euros related to, major governmental figures just in the past 2 months before the election, prior to the election. So there was all in the news, corruption scandals, frauds and stuff like that. So that was a kind of, point of view of the liberals and the progressives living in the capital that yes, right now they will be defeated, that's for sure, because it's ultimately understandable for the majority of the people that they are extremely corrupted, they are doing wrong to the country, our hospitals are in extremely bad shape, our public education is worse than ever, and stuff like that. So this, support from the society, 49% of the voters casted their vote in the national list on the government, was really a shock for the people. So that's why some folks in the capital came up with the idea to organize a protest just on the weekend coming after the election. And that was really a huge success because around 90,000, 100,000 people gathered on the streets of Budapest, and they marched on the streets of Budapest, and at the end, in front of the parliament, on the main square of the capital, there was speeches by the organizers, and maybe that's the point when we should show the pictures of this demonstration, and then I can continue.
We will not play it with the music, so without music, just the background to see. We can discuss while the pictures will be showing to see how many people actually got to the protests in Budapest. Okay, you described the context, what these people are demanding and what they, in your opinion, are actually able to achieve. What is it?
So there is a great difference what the protesters want to achieve and what the organizers are providing them. Because the organizers are talking about, or used to talk about, a re-election, which is of course not a feasible demand. Then they talked about measurements in order to get a free media, because the problem is with my country that right now it is the only one-party system in the entire European Union. So by law, the government is responsible for running the public media, the national bank, the entire parliament, the entire juridical system, and so on. So this is really a single-handed phenomenon in the entire European Union. So it's very hard right now to name a single demand which would be feasible. Because back before this election, when the government just had this majority, not the supermajority, not the constitutional majority, but the majority, they were still so ruthless and so reckless in refusing constantly all the critics, all the opposition demands and initiations, that right now when they have the supermajority, they will be more ruthless, they will be more reckless in order to not negotiate with anybody. So really, when they had just the majority and there were some legislations which needed a constitutional majority, they didn't take care. They passed these legislations, harmed the constitution, which was written by themselves, and then they were waiting for the jury of the constitution to say that it is not, feasible. But it will take a year till the jury will make this decision. So actually, it was a kind of a coup by themselves, and they were not, they didn't have any kind of a fear to dare to do it. Mm-hmm. So right now, it's very tricky thing. What could you demand, even if you have that large amount of people on the streets? But most of the people who are on the streets are demanding, of course I don't know their opinion by every individual, but there are some demands, for example, asking the opposition candidates to not taking their mandates and not sit in the parliament, which I support strongly. I guess that would be a very important step, but it will not happen, that's for sure. There are other demands that we should somehow create an alternative public media in order to provide not just fake news and not just government news to the people who are living in the countryside, because in the Hungarian news system, public media still have a very respected position. But it was proved by The Guardian and other investigative journalists that since years, the minister responsible for communication is directly ordering the news in the editor, directly asking for news by the editorial team. So they are typing what kind of leads do they have to use, what kind of slogans do they have to use, and public media doesn't represent any opposition candidates, not even during the campaign. So right now it is very hard to say what kind of a feasible demand should they fight for.
So it very much seems that the number of people which has shown in Budapest, it's more the mirror of frustration and the last sign of some hope or some civic idea than real demands from the political system and from the politicians. Do I understand it correctly?
So these kind of demonstrations happened in the past 8 years. So this is not a new phenomenon in my country. After 2010, huge demonstrations happened, even where people were more than 150,000 on the street. And there were some, achievements, like they prevented the taxation on internet, for example, which was an important issue back in 2014. But the point is that, this kind of demonstrations is a phenomenon of, and I use this phrase, politics without representation. So the problem is with these demonstrations that there is no, organizational achievement behind them. So if you are not building a community, if you are not providing the possibility for the demonstrators to join to you, to somehow organize themselves as a community, then you couldn't fight for any kind of a demand. So I'm saying it not just here, but in my country too, that it is not, the question of what would be the demand, what these demonstrators are asking for, but the question is that what is the structure which you want to use in order to achieve your demand. So the question is that would you make coalition with unions, other movements, other political institutions? Okay, you are delusionized with the opposition parties. You don't want to interfere with them. Okay, that's not a problem. But then you have to find other allies in the society, because just a couple of people on the stages, white males mostly or only. That's why I'm glad that you are not. Just side note, it is not possible in my country that a couple of women standing on the stage and organizing such a protest, because white males will come and take it over. That's happened and it's going on right now, so I'm very proud of you, really. And you are showing the best.
Thank you, Marta.
No, really, we have to fight for women representation during these demonstrations. So 5 males are talking on the stage, and they don't, even think about that. Maybe there is a lack of something. Maybe if we are not represent our society equally, then we are not better than our government, which we are fighting against for. So it's an important thing. It's not just about representation. It's really about ethics, codes, and ideology. So, and that's what I lack in these kind of demonstrations, and I guess it's a problem.
Thank you. You said many different things, and I would like to turn to Katarina and Karolina, because you mentioned the phrase politics without representation, and it sounds very familiar now. I think especially one of the last videos from our ex-prime minister was in this line of thinking that, okay, what are these protesters actually requesting? What is their legitimacy if they are not political party, they are not elected, so what right do they have to request anything? So what do you think about it, and how do you deal with this kind of, is it dilemma for you? What do you think about it, and how you are going to respond to these kind of questions and these kind of challenges which actually Martin just have mentioned?
Yeah, so I would start. I think that and I do believe that we have every right to demand a decent Slovakia, and that's the thing we're fighting for, and we want to also show the people, and we are really glad that thousands of people show that too. And that's the thing that politicians right now, they're forgetting it, that why they're there. They're not there based on their careers or the things. They're there because people trusted them and they voted for them in elections. And it's in our constitution that the power it's coming from people. So we do believe and we know that some things have to be done in a parliament, and some things can be done in the squares, for example. So we are not some kind of group of people who want to do just what we want to do, and we are not okay with democracy, even like our ex-prime minister said, or something like that. However, we do believe that we have to use it correctly, the rights and everything, and based on that, we have every right to say if we are satisfied with our, for example, new ministers of interior, or if we don't believe her at all. So, yes, and I think that Katka would, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was something that we discussed from the beginning, and also from the beginning came many ideas to us that maybe we should become a political party, not just some platform. But as Karolina said, I think it's actually the role of civic society to say it's enough, that you have some boundaries, that you cannot do just whatever you want, that we are here to watch you, that we are here to give you our vote if we think you're right, but we are also here to say that we don't agree with your actions. And I think this is what happened in past 2 months in Slovakia, that many people started to actually for the first time say out loud that this is enough, that they want to see it. They started to say their opinions out loud.
And okay, so people are saying on the streets, okay, this is enough. You have organized already how many? 5 big protests, marches?
Yes.
So what will follow? What should be the next step? How long can you stay on the squares and on the streets? How long we all can stay on the streets? So what do you plan for the future? And do you think that this will actually create some kind of movement or long-term initiative? What's your thinking about it?
So right now, we have planned on Monday meeting with organisers from the towns all over Slovakia who are organizing their also gatherings for decent Slovakia, and we'll try and we're working on a thing that we just don't want to stay in squares. Of course, it's as a legitimate and very good way how to show your opinion. But also there are other ways which you can do for long-term activities. And because of that, we decided that our initiative wants to become a platform, a nationwide platform, and to work on a civic engagement in Slovakia at all, and to create and to create a civic society which is already here, and to do more things. For example, we want to also we want to support people to go to the politics, for example, to the regional politics, because that's the thing that people are sometimes scared of the politics, because they think that it's something not right, that bad things are happening there, and it's not something for that. But on the other hand, that's the thing that we need here. We need here a decent, fair people who want to create a better country, and who wants to make different things. So this is one way of what we can do, and there are more others, and we're discussing it right now.
So it really seems that you are trying to make it long term, And I know that there is this difficult discussion about what you should demand and how you should actually position for this in Slovakia in relation to the possible political party and participation in the local elections. So how do you see that? Do you have any limits which you think in this moment you are not going to cross as a platform or as a movement?
I would actually connect to Martin's words when he was discussing that in Hungary, or like in general, it is very important that you don't stay alone in this, but you create actually a structure and you connect with the different initiations and organizations. So altogether in Slovakia is more than 100 organizers of these gatherings, and more than 100 from different parts of Slovakia, from different backgrounds. Also means that everybody has different opinion of what they want and different interests. And the meeting Carolina mentioned is also important because we need to discuss our strategy, which is not going to be decided only from us, but which is going to be decided from all over Slovakia. And this is something we have big discussions about, because as you said, there's a question if we should become a politician party, and there is a discussion if we should demand referendum?
Elections.
Elections. And we discuss it a lot all together, because we always want to remember what is our role, what is the role of the street actually in this type of questions. And
Political party. Political party.
yes, when we are asking about the limits, we discussed at the beginning with the families of Jan and Martina, and we promised them that we are not going to become a politician party, but it is possible that some people from the platform will join others political parties, and we actually encourage them to go to the politics.
Okay, you also have here some of your colleagues, so maybe not to make a wrong idea that just two women organized this protest, can I ask the other organizers of For Decent Slovakia to stand up now, just to show you that there are some other people?
Well, Tanya is there, but she's also women.
And also Kuba. And also
Kuba, the person behind the camera.
Like in Bratislava team, it is 9 people, and out of them is 5 male and 5 women actually, and
5 to 5.
no, it's 5 and 4.
5
women lead.
Very good. Okay. Okay. Maybe one last question from me to you, and then the audience can have some more questions. How do you keep the very decent atmosphere and decent behavior of the people on the square? How do you think about it? How do you prepare for that? Are you scared of changing this? What do you do with that?
Well, maybe it's, again, how it started, because at the beginning we knew that everybody came to the march with anger and frustration, and of course we were scared one night before and we couldn't sleep and we were thinking of what to do. And there are a couple things which we can do as organizers. One is that we can actually work with silence, that the silence with the big mass of people is actually a very strong tool. Second one is dramaturgy of all the event, and we always we try to put equal speakers who are more angry or not angry, who are more loud,
Mobilized.
mobilized with people who are actually peacemakers. We always called, for example, somebody from church to speak out loud. So we were trying to do it with the dramaturgy as well. And the third thing is security, which is actually huge thanks to Kubo, the man behind the camera, because he always worked with the security. And except for police, we have a different company which is helping us to do it in a decent way. And behind the scene, we have a lot of cameras which are showing the mass of the people. And we always see if there is somebody who is going to say something loud or who is provocating, and they connect with the headphones. And if there is somebody like this, people in the Civic actually clothes came to him and just say, you know, it's not good for what we want. It's not helping that you are this loud. It would be better for everybody if you could do it a little bit more silent.
And I suppose you didn't know all of this at the beginning. Was there any accident which you consider that, okay, we really have to focus on keeping the non-violent demonstrations, and when you got very cautious about it?
Before one gathering, one thing happened, and it was like pretty serious, and we were really discussing it really seriously. Our prime minister, he started to tell things about us to the journalists and to the TV, to the television, that yes, he is supporting, he respects democracy and other opinions than his, but he is telling people that he is concerned if the gathering is going to be peaceful, and he believes that there's going to be blood in the streets. And at one evening, he called for the Security Council of the state, which is a pretty serious thing, which is happening when some kind of threatening is really happening, like war or things which are really serious. And this was something really shocking for us, because we had to deal with things like this that we really wanted from all of our efforts to make it most decent, like it could be. And he told us in the television, we were concerned if the people wouldn't like to come. We were concerned if anything is going to happen there. So at that moment, we called to the policeman we were connected to. He told us that he doesn't know about anything in which we should be concerned about. And we deal with it at that moment, because we really take it seriously, because it is a serious thing to have there thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and to take care of that. But from the technical side, Katka said it pretty clearly. I would just add that the thing why people came to the squares, that they were here, was killed, an investigative journalist and his fiancée, because he was a journalist, and he saw the things that there is organized crime connected to the government and so on. And this was quite a direct attack on the democracy, and people they stood up for their rights, and they wanted to have a real decent country in which they want to live in. And this was something that they wanted to have, a country in which they want to live in, and they acted like that. And this was also really something which played a role.
Thank you. Martin, have you dealt with this kind of questions in the demonstration which you have organized? I know that after one of them you ended up in the, not in the jail, but in the public, you were...
No, in the jail, yes.
In the jail?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so tell us more about it.
Not in the public. But that was a previous thing. No, right now I guess there's great differences between Slovakia and Hungary, because just after the election, the government-related media started, in massive amounts, accusing me as a Soros-paid guy. I was never ever, related to Soros or any organization funded by Soros. I have no problems with that, but that's just for the fact. that they are accusing me that as I am as an organizer, which I'm not, trying to organize a kind of, rally where we will destroy public property in the city. And I even invited anti-fascist activists from Hamburg to cause a scene and put the fire on the streets. Which was not true, of course, but when they are printing it out in the front pages of tabloids, when they are talking about it in television, then they are, massively putting it on the news in all the major news sites in the country, then people are asking these questions and getting afraid of, showing up on the demonstration. And that was also a question that maybe it's a sign of that the government is preparing a kind of provocation, and that's how they are trying to undermine the credibility of these protests and the protesters itself. But nothing that like happened. So these demonstrations are still peaceful, non-violent, which is an important thing. Actually, a violent accident occurred during this week, and I will have a special request for you, but I guess we will go with that at the end of the panel.
Yeah, at the end of the panel, we will have 2 requests from both of the initiatives. Now maybe let's involve you to the discussion, and if you have either some question to the representatives of 2 initiatives in Slovakia and in Hungary, or if you would like to share some experience with the protests from your country, it's also possible to say that. And I would like to, okay, Anna is here with the microphone, so if you would like to either ask or, okay, Doug, please. We will go.
Thank you very much for everything that you shared. I'm fascinated by Slušné and how that helped unify the decency. I'm sure I'm not saying the word right. Can you talk about the process more of how that came about? Because it feels, as an outsider, it feels like that was an important piece of building this.
The process of what?
Of the name?
Of coming to decency being the word.
Okay, so selecting the name for the initiative.
Okay. It started after the first march, and as I said before, we were concerned about the security of the event, of the people. But even though it was at that time the biggest since the fall of communism, we could say that the march was very decent, that you had many people with families, with women with babies, with trolleys, and it was really cold that night, and everybody was actually passing each other tea to warm up. And the day after, we all discussed this, that the march was very decent. And the word decent stayed in our minds, and this is how we started to work with it. But actually, to opposite you, right now a lot of people in Slovakia are discussing if the decent is a good word. Maybe it should be the word of justice Slovakia, not decent, because, for example, well, I say it very this way, but it's easier. Catholic family says the decent is to be a family, and people from LGBTI community say the decent is to have all kinds. And for example, this is also the matter we need to discuss within our team. What does decency mean, and what does it mean in families? What does it mean in education? What does it mean in hospitals?
I can see that Juraj Šeliga was asking for the microphone. Actually, him together with Karolina are standing on this tribune, so Juraj.
Yeah. Hi, I have a question for all of you. In case that there is a one thing you could have done differently, what would be the thing during the process? Sorry, it's a tough question, I guess.
Okay, I was thinking that you will say something different, but okay. Who would like to start? What do you would?
Maybe we need more time.
Okay, and this is a kind, not an advice, but something which is coming from experience. That I guess, It's not a question that these protesters have the legitimacy or not. The question is what they are represent. And I guess because, I'm saying this because in the past 7 years I organized massive demonstrations where thousands of people occurred, and we had this kind of, ethical victory, and we were, the good guys who fought for the righteous cause. But at the end of the day, this government got the 2/3 majority. So I guess there is this kind of a mindset, and I'm not accusing you, I'm just saying it is as a failure of mine, that progressives are fine with ethical victory, and those bastards who are in charge got the mandates. And mandates means power. So the question is whether you should want to see a change, which you will need the power, and then you have to enter some way into politics. I'm not saying that you should turn yourself into a political party, not at all. That's not, a must. I'm just saying that somehow you should engage those people who are not corrupted, who are not, familiar with the previous establishment, who are also suffering from those politicians who are trying to represent them and not, capable of doing it, to somehow sharing the stage with them. Union people, movement people, people from different backgrounds, even from small parties or new parties, people from or the establishment parties who are belonging to a smaller fraction and also suffering from the corruption scandals and other things running in the party. To somehow empower these people, because if we don't use these kind of momentums, to somehow making a step forward and getting representation in those bodies where representation matters and where the power belongs to, then these bastards will always get the chance to take this over on us, and we will never be in charge to really, get heard and really to have a word in the process of making legislations, making decisions. Because at the end of the day, this is the thing, this is the question: who make the legislative decisions? And that's why I guess we should not, alienate ourselves from those who are in charge or from those who has the aspiration, the ambition to go for an office. We should somehow make a coalition with them and, taking them under pressure that, okay, now we have the support for you. But if you betray us, then you will get, the anger from us also. So I guess we should not distrust all the politicians and all of those people who are fighting for a change, because even if they are belonging to a corrupted body, maybe we can help them to get over from it and somehow getting on the righteous path.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Martin. What about two of you? Is there anything what you would have done different?
Well, I don't know if we both agree on this, but I think when I look back for those 2 months, I think the very weak spot was when we annulled the gathering on one Friday, and we announced it only on Thursday. And I'm all right with the fact that we annulled the gathering, because I think it was the right decision within all the information we had. But what I think was done, which could be done better, is the communication of the reasons why we canceled that gathering. So I think this was a little bit, it was something which a little bit put us down and interrupted the momentum for some time, and a lot of people after that also started to question our motivations, and for another 2 weeks it was really hard to explain it for media, and also in front of other 100 organizers from all over Slovakia.
Would you like to add, Karolina?
Yeah, I think, I do agree with what Katka said. The fact is that, like, when you're doing things like this and the things are changing really pretty fast, so we made a decision and we communicated it with the people right at the time, but it was like really late for them, and it was just something that we know right now that we have to communicate with also the people in the regions, the organizers, but with the whole Slovakia, like more like in a better way, and yes, that's the thing.
Actually, what does it mean to organize the public gathering or march almost every Friday or Thursday. So probably it's not very easy job to try to do it, because that was one of the things why, well, the political context as well, but also the speed of the meetings which were just unfolding from the originally planned just one march to remember Jan and Martina to every week activity with number of organizational things and thousands of people on the streets.
Yeah, well, it looks much easier when we look at it back, but at the time we didn't have any plan and we didn't know like what's going to happen. So our group dynamic was that we always just focus on the Friday. Then on Saturday we were cleaning all of our apartment, washing clothes and just resting. And we were actually forbidden to talk about this matter. And then on Sunday we met and we discussed what are going to be another steps. And we just always reacted to the fact that we didn't see that the politicians are taking any politician responsibility, and we knew we had to continue. But it was super hard for all of us because most of us have daily jobs. Juraj actually had to quit his job at the beginning to be able to continue. Karolina is a daily student and she's not really visiting the school, and she is actually threatened from all other people of Slovakia who are writing her letters, how is it possible that she's not going to school. I had a daily job and then I started to be on maternity leave. My husband has a daily job. Tanya wasn't doing her job. It was so hard to connect it with everything because it looked that, well, for me it looked that in the morning I was in my regular job, then at 4 o'clock I came to Tanya's apartment and we stayed there until the night, which I know that was horrible even for Tanya and her apartment, that we stayed there so much. And yes, of course it is hard, and I don't know if the question at the beginning would be like, okay, do you want to now every Friday organize a huge protest on the street for another 2 months? If all of us would say yes. But it happened and we felt the responsibility that we have to do it and we have to do it this way.
So when is the next protest?
Next Friday.
Okay,
but first, we will discuss about next Friday with all the regions on Monday, okay? So don't get too excited.
Okay, I saw the hand over there, so please.
Thank you. It was exactly the question I wanted to ask. Will be there a protest today? Because isn't it Friday today?
So what about this week?
Wish?
So right now, actually, this Friday there is something in the town, but it is not organized by our initiative. It is by some another groups. This week, for those of you who don't know, our new ministers of the interior was appointed by the president. He doesn't have a right to not appoint her, even though he wasn't satisfied with her. As a person for that position, and right now it is quite a difficult situation for us to react on the things which are here because our the main requirements which are here are still actual that we need and we want here to have an objective investigation of the murder of Jan and Martina, and that we need here a government in which we could trust. There is a question if we can trust in this government, and if not, what can we do about it, and also what kind of systematic changes should be done here, for example, in the police. also because of that and because of how we do see the things for us and for our future, we are meeting on this Monday, with also with the organizers from the regions, because we are still communicating with them. We have Facebook or phones and so on, but it's important to really meet at all. We actually did that a few times, and we will see to what we will come and what our next steps will be. But only like the fact is that we won't stop with the activities, and we will just see like how they will see and how they would be.
So trying to reach some agreement with the people from all over the Slovakia on the direction of the protests and the platform.
Yes.
Okay. Julia, please.
Just because I was asked by the colleague, just to say a little bit about the protests in the United States right now, because we're experiencing these crazy numbers of protests. And two thoughts. One is I think there's a euphoria that comes from being together on the street. And I think right after Trump was elected, the fact that the women were the ones who came together because we were so shocked that a misogynist was elected, that there was just an amazing amount of people. And then how much it dissipated from there. And then these young students who are incredible organizers, and to see their counterparts here in Slovakia is really impressive. And they were traumatized by this gun violence, and then they're in the media, and now they're on the streets, and everybody's behind them and following them. No changes in the laws, no discussions. We are distracted every day. There is a new crisis in our system. So I just want to 1,000% agree with our Hungarian colleague, because the real work that we've been working on, it has nothing to do with the protests. The protests feel really good. I have to say, we are euphoric to see so many people. It's always been decent. We're all there together, no violence, everyone together with the funny signs. So we're making fun of the other side. So we've been talking about polarization so much. The protests are polarizing us even more. And so half the society who voted for Trump, the majority of women voters voted for Trump. So then the Women's March happened, we lost all of them. They don't believe in our cause now. And all of those gun rights owners, they went and bought more guns. Gun sales went all the way through the roof because they were buying, oh my gosh, they're gonna take our guns away, so now there's more guns in the United States after the protest. This is not a good way of political solutions. So what do we need to do? We have to register voters, and we have to vote, and we have to have new candidates. So we're protesting a lot, and then we're thinking about what happens afterwards.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, there is a hand behind. Andrei?
Hello, thank you. I have a question for Marton. When you talk about involving more groups, does that involve Jobbik, who are a neo-fascist party, even more dangerous than Fidesz? Why or why not?
Yeah, that's okay. Say stop, and I'm speaking the topic, because that's one. It's an interesting one. So Jobbik is a extreme far-right party established back in 2006, and they got the fame by marching in the countryside at towns which are mostly populated of Roma Hungarians. And they threatened them, they called them, crimers, and they tried to somehow unite the white supremacist part of the society, saying that all of our problems are rooted to the Roma people, so we have to get rid of them. They even called for a cleanization of Roma people, segregation of Roma people from public schools, and so on. But this was between 2006 and 2012-13. And after 2013, they made a huge turnaround, and they started to develop a semi-decent way of politics, So they try to, somehow masquerade themselves as a kind of a centrist, still a nationalistic one, but not a gypsy hater, not an anti-Semitic, and not said that extremist party. Still, in the director board of this party are anti-Semitic persons who had, violations against the law several times, and they were, sentenced to, penalties by the court, and so on. But the fact is this, right now Hungary has a government which promoted anti-Semitic slogans and rhetoric on billboards in massive amounts. I'm talking about thousands of billboards saying that we should get rid of Soros and his money, we should not let Soros have any influence on our country. And these slogans are masqueraded in an anti-Semitic way. So it is not openly anti-Semitic, but it's understandably accusing Jewish people of the society. These government and the prime minister of my government or our government had, sayings like we should get rid of Roma people because they are the migrants, which someone, took it into this country. But of course, they are not, inherently Hungarians or something like that. Maybe I'm not translating it correctly, but the point is that they are openly racist, they are openly xenophobic, they are openly anti-Semitic, and so on. So if you are asking about what should we do about the force which promotes these hateful rhetorics and politics, then I would like to say and express that we have this force in government, not in the opposition. And the problem is that 70% of the society voted on either the governmental party or Jobbik, which is also still an extremist party. So I'm not saying that we should, make coalitions with those forces which are promoting hatred and so on. But the problem is that 70% of the society went with them. And if we are labeling these voters as anti-Semitic, xenophobic, racist figures, then we lost them. And the problem is that we are not the majority. We are the minority, a weak minority without any kind of a representation, because in my country there is no anti-racist party which declares that yes, we are treating equally the Roma and the white, we are treating equally the male and the female persons. Of course they are not anti-females, but they are not pro-feminists, and that's a huge difference, because okay, you are not accusing women as being, betraying the country if they're not, giving birth to at minimum 3 children. But if you are not promoting the the equal rights for them, then you are not a pro-feminist, which is, right now needed in my country. So my my response is that there are great and honest and trustworthy people in Jobbik. I know it because I met with them. I even work with them in the countryside, who are not anti-Semitic, who are not promoting racism, just belonging to a party which they think is the best option for them to get attack on the government. They are also frustrated by these sides of the party. And if we are labeling them as a kind of, racist and so on, we lost them. And we need them for a new kind of coalition. But of course, this coalition could not be, we could not, tolerate any kind of hatred. But we should not label themselves as someone who is, promoting hatred. We should be somehow making a coalition which is not alienating them and not saying, okay, this is just a liberal propaganda bullshit, something like that. Because we tried to do it in the past. We made huge demonstrations against Jobbik. We made huge demonstrations against Orban. And, the result is that anti-Orbanism, the strict promotion of equal rights, resulted only one thing: the two-thirds majority of Fidesz. So this kind of identity political fights and struggles are alienating those who we need for the change. So somehow we should promote these values as not something they are lacking, but something which they are needing, which they are need. So I guess there's a huge difference between the two kind of, aspiration or behavior.
Maybe I will follow with one more question to you, and we were talking about it a little bit during the lunch. You are part of the movement Country for All, and you did some activities and you have some ideas for the building up the movement. Can you say a little bit more about how you think about it? What do you consider as important for? You already said that it's important to have the influence through democratic institutions, so go to the parliament, vote, to be in the political system, to have real influence. So what is your way of thinking how you are going to build the movement?
Okay, if I were right now a Slovakian, I would fight for municipality offices and positions, and I would, ask any other, capable and trustworthy person to do the same. Because that's what I guess it's important right now, because you still have a rule of law, you still have independent fundamental system which are responsible for running a civil society and a decent society. In the case of Hungary, right now we have this, again, the constitutional majority of just one party, which already destroyed or harmed extremely most of the fundamental institutions of the rule of law. And right now they already announced that they are going ahead harming NGOs, putting on them extra taxation, expelling people from the country or trying to expel people from the country. So there are evil things are coming. And I told the opposition MPs not taking their mandates because it would only empower Fidesz and only empower the one-party system, and say, because it would provide them, this kind of set design that yes, we are still a democracy because all the opposition parties are here, so there is a possibility for negotiation, but no negotiations happens at all. So right now, I guess it's a misconcept in my country, but just in my country, in this region, to run for any elected offices, because first of all, because this is already a one-party system, so you could not break it from within the frames of the system. So even if you would run for a mayor position or for any position in a municipality government, you will be just part of the system, and the system would wreck you into pieces. It happens with, for example, independent mayors who got their seats just 2 months before. The guy who was a big miracle just previously the election is right now threatened by the other members of the municipality government, and they are erecting obstacles constantly in front of him, so he is not capable to do anything at all. So right now, my vision is that we should form a new kind of a coalition outside of the entire legal system, and saying that we are fighting for the total collapse of this system, and then we will be able to establish a new one, a very proportionate system in terms of election. Then we will be able to have a real free public media and so on. So I guess from now on, we should go back to the experiences before the transition, and fighting against the state and fighting against the system as it is a one-party system. It's not a dictatorship, but it is a clearly authoritarian one-party system which you could not break from within the system. From inside the system, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions or comments? Or you are so shocked or so tired? Yeah, yes, please.
I'm sorry, one more question. I'm a Bulgarian journalist, and my question is to Slovakian, decent Slovakia movement. The cause was the murder of a journalist. How much people who are gathering in the streets care about the investigative story he was working on? Because these are different things. The investigation about the murder and the story that he was trying to reveal. And do you support somehow the media or the work of a journalist to continue on this field, and the public also, the people to search for the facts?
Mm-hmm.
Carolina.
Yes, this is a really important thing to care about. I can't say from the point of view from the people who care to the gatherings, but like from the point of view, for example, from the medias. So there are many medias right now in Slovakia which are connected right now, and because after the murder, after the death of Jan, so Actuality, the media for which he was working for, they shared his last article, which wasn't finished because he was killed, and this was the article he was working on, and also other medias, they also shared that because it is like something like legacy from him, and something which like really shares the concerns and concerns to the government and to the more other people. And right now the case he was working on is also working on more journalists, and it is something which is still and which will be still actual, because it is the thing based on most probably he was killed. So it is also something which is still actual right now in Slovakia. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? You can also, if you would like to share the experience with the protest. Okay, please.
Hello, I'm asking as a Hungarian, as a fellow Hungarian from Marci, what perspective can a movement like you described offer to would-be followers? So, I would like to add my comment. So, I studied political sciences on the university. And I'm always trying to put political events into greater perspective. If one wants to understand this, two-third majority for this Fidesz government, one really has to take the last 12 years into account. And what Fidesz was really very good at was reaching the countryside and organizing a lot of events there and asking the people, and they were delivering a very deliberate illusion that they really care about their opinions. And they organized a lot of things which they call national consultations, where they sent people personal letters into every single mailbox signed by the Prime Minister himself, and they were posing the most stupidest questions, like 12 of them, which were absolutely biased. But for the most simple people, it was like, oh, the Prime Minister wants to know what I think. Isn't that honoring? So a huge part of the country really felt itself included in the whole debate and truly empowered. This was really a thing that they never experienced. And actually, I'm pretty fed up with the Fidesz government, but to be honest, I'm much more angry about the leftist politicians for all the opportunities they have missed in the last 12 years. Because and I know that we're totally on the same ground on this, so, what I think, and this is my comment, we need at least 12 years or even more if we would like to build up something that is entirely different, that is rooted in liberal and leftist values. So what I think we really have to rebuild our democracy and re-educate the whole countryside, because most of the countryside is, well, in a sense brainwashed, but in a sense have never been really introduced to participatory democracy. So we really have to start from the very roots. My first question is, are you prepared for that? And do you think those people who you are working with are prepared for that? How wide of a coalition do you think is behind such a movement, like, for example, Közösország, common country movement? And what's your guess about how long will it take?
I really don't know. So I don't want to, say you any bullshit because I'm not good at it. After the election, I told the people that right now we have to stop for a while, thinking about our failures and making an analysis what went wrong. Because it's not just that Fidesz manipulated every legislation and manipulated the public media and so on and all of that stuff. No, it's really that people feel somehow defended by this political force. It's not their dumbness. It's not their stupidity. I'm really I'm not talking about you, I'm just saying that there's this general accusation of these voters who casted their vote on the governmental party that, oh, they are the dumbest people on earth. No, I'm totally against this, concept of labeling those people who are sharing a different political view. They, I guess they made a rational decision, because Fidesz, the government party, showed a strong and stable force, which is, I guess, important for those people who are in need and who are getting low wages, who have, insecure jobs, and who are facing huge difficulties on their daily life. So labeling them as stupid, unmature people is just, that elitism which, resulted in the first two-thirds. So first of all, I guess we should make an analysis and we should really rethink all of our critics against this regime, because of course they are cheating, because of course they are lying, of course they are nothing else than robbers of EU funds, Hungarian public funds, and so on, and they are making great damages on my society. But the problem is that they are able to somehow cover it and masquerade it into a kind of, that we are saviors of the Hungarian sovereignty. And it's not just the migrant issue. I'm not talking about just the refugee crisis and these toxic solutions which my government tried to promote. I'm talking about that this kind of a stability, of course it was supported by international economic growth and prosperity, because wages are emerging not by the results of these politics made by the government, but because of the entire international environment. But the point is that even if there will be an economical collapse, there is no opposition story about the country. It's just about anti-urbanism. And just as in America, anti-Trumpism resulted in the election, in getting elected Donald Trump, anti-urbanism empowered Orban, because the opposition didn't talk about a different narrative, a different shape of the country, view of the country, but just about emerging constantly the narrative of Orban's. And he was good of getting the votes necessary for keeping this story selling to the country. So I have no quick solutions right now. I'm right now in the analysis phase, and I guess at the end of summer we will have some announcement for the public, but not before.
But maybe there was another aspect of that question, and it's question also here in Slovakia. It's the capital city and the countryside, or capital city and rest of the country. Do you consider, or do you think of the strategy which will deeply include also outside Budapest regions and working with them?
Yeah, this is a kind of narrative which is very frequent right now in the opposition media, but my consideration is that it is mainly a bad understanding of what happened, because in the countryside, in the towns, in the cities, which most of the people are living still in these cities. Even the upper middle class and middle class people in these cities voted on the government, so not just the poor ones. So first of all, I guess the task is to reach out to these cities, which are quite a lot we have, and reach out to those people and try to involve them and try to build together with them a kind of a coalition. So because the countryside doesn't mean villages, at all. There are villages, of course, but I guess that's the toughest question, and we should not, going with the toughest task when we are not able to solve the simplest ones. So right right now, I guess there is a task in the capital, because even in the capital, the governmental party has strong alliances. So first you have to get, support from capital people, and then in the countryside, from the town people and the city people. And if we will be able to do that, then it would mean the majority, and with this majority, we would be able to go ahead to the village people. But be frankly, in the villages, political decisions made by direct relations to the mayor, to the local authorities, because they have extreme power. They not just over those who are working for the municipalities, but over everybody who is getting their income within frames of the village. So in the villages, it's still a feudalistic system, and you could not break it by coming outside and saying that yes, we promote democracy, and you don't want to have share proportion and system, and no, okay. So no, that will not work, because there are stronger relations between those who have the force, the power, and those who have somehow obey the power.
Thank you. I think now is the time. Okay, very last question. Comment is also fine. Very last comment, Susa.
Thank you very much. I would like to say some words from my perspective as a normal participant of the Decent Slovakia events, and because I feel there is some additional value of these demonstrations in Slovakia which was not mentioned yet here. And maybe for our foreign colleagues to understand why we are so fascinated by what's happening now in Slovakia. I think the first time the movement, the civic movement showed a huge amount of true solidarity. Solidarity, I mean, you were talking about the regions and the capital. That was the problem that often the previous protests and different groups protesting for particular cause, they were concentrated in Bratislava, having kind of Bratislava agenda, the capital agenda, very intellectual or particular. The very difference is that these days people feel like all Slovakia is protesting, that there are people in the very eastern regions or in very small towns where never had been demonstrations before, never, even during Velvet Revolutions, they did not have big demonstrations. Suddenly people appear on the squares and they speak out and they feel like yes. And what's very nice, it is that people in Bratislava, they are referring to the regions, and that the strength of the movement is like we are all together. And the other level of solidarity is like cross-sectoral, or that they are not only young people, students, but we had a big cause of farmers who were harmed really by the corruption cases this journalist was writing about. And the students and the organizers were kind of showing solidarity with the farmers, inviting them to Bratislava. And the cause was on the eastern part of Slovakia. So that people feel that it's not just about students, not just about intelligent people, not just about those who live in the capital, but also about poor people, about, nurses in the hospitals, about teachers who have their own problems, and that various initiatives of various professional groups or of various countryside groups, that they feel they can be involved. This is a big value, I feel, and I must tell you, I live in village, though I'm not from there, and always when I take some veggies from the demonstration in my village, I'm always asked to give it to somebody, so I never have one. And the people say, okay, we are busy here in our farm, but you say in Bratislava that we are also with them. So then this is something I think very new. This was not here before. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor, the last chance to say something to both initiatives and to also, if you have some requests or some appeal, you might say that. But before that, I am very thankful for the people like you, because I think you are able to think and to take advantage. It doesn't sound right in this context, but sorry for that. Or to react on the actual situation, but also think long term. And have this long term perspective and thinking about what is really the way, long term way, how to influence the public life, which naturally mean politics in our countries. And it's very easy to get excited and to get to the streets, and we saw many of those initiatives also in Slovakia previously, but the very difficult work starts when you take it seriously and you take the number of people in the streets as a commitment to make change in the long term. And I think this is happening. So thank you very much for that. And
Może iba jedna za nas? Iba jedna za nas?
yeah, and you can say the last words, whatever you want, and you can make an appeal as well, and then Martin as well.
Thank you. I would like to say actually three things. First of all, there is also one organizer from Banska Bystrica here, or one of the organizers, and we are always just saying about Bratislava, so I think the applause is to her too, because it's not only about Bratislava, but about the region, so thank you. Second thing is one of my own experience, which happened 2 weeks ago when I came to my hometown, which is in the middle of Slovakia, and it's a very small town. But actually local farmers came to me and they started to talk about their experience with corruptions. And I think this is what Zuzá was talking about, that everybody is actually giving their voice to this in Slovakia, and it made me very happy. And third thing I wanted to maybe ask you is if you look down to your chairs, you see a little flyers about this in Slovakia. And even though we were also, as it was in Hungary, we were accused that we are paid by Soros. Carolina, for example, is paid by Soros because she is involved in debating club. So this is the link, but we are not paid by Soros, we are paid until now by individual donations, and right now we are, I think, 2,000 in depth. So I would really like to ask you, and if you want to support us, if you like what we are doing, if you want to support our long-term actions, which we talked about a little bit, if you could give us some donations, it would be very much appreciated by us.
Martin.
Okay. So at the beginning of this week, there was an attack by security guards who are responsible for saving or guarding a construction site which is in the middle of the city. This construction site took place in the heart of the city, at the city garden, where the government and the local municipality tries to build new museums, concrete museums, which they never ask the people whether they want these museums or not, whether they want to destroy their parks or not. They didn't dare to call for a referendum. They did all the measures to somehow put it out of the table, so don't have the referendum on this issue. And they made a lot of change in legislations, municipality level, nationwide level. I'm not going into details. But the point is that there is a constant demonstration against this construction because it would harm this public park, which is the oldest one in the European Union right now. So, and these security guards attacked these activists, and they beat them down to the floor. One of them got into the hospital. She is fine right now. But during this hour, there is a solidarity demonstration in favor of showing solidarity towards those who got attacked and saying that this is not acceptable. So I would like to ask those who are solidar for this cause and would like to show their solidarity to take a common selfie, and I would like to upload it to the website of these demonstrators and activists, showing that even in Bratislava, people are aware of the fact that these things are going on in the capital. And the most outrageous thing of this incident is that police forces were standing next to the accident and did nothing in order to prevent it from happening and saving these activists from these brutal forces of the bodyguards.
So we should do selfie and...
Okay, those who are, yes, those who want to be on the selfie, please come here and I will take it together from us. All of you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, then...
Okay, let's do that.
Who wanna take it?
I think...
To your phone? Yes. I won't be on it, but it doesn't matter. So I will take it won't be the selfie, I will. Yeah, please come.
Right?
Yeah, maybe. Or your fist, whatever you want.
Well, it's recording.
What is the L about?
L? It's recording? No.
Why is it recording?
A není to asi tak slovo?